Welcome back. Data Innovation Summit 2018 with a brand new panel of highly esteemed experts in the field of AI. So we got a lot of questions from delegates, probably the most questions of any of the panels, 3 pages. It's pretty impressive. And all of them are asking the same question, so we only had to print one really, which is, how do we prevent the robots from taking over? In all seriousness, no, there's quite a lot of concern about the safety and ethics of AI, and there have been some events this past week that are at the forefront of news and that kind of thing. So that seems to be what's top of mind for people. So let's just go and take a little round here around the table and introduce yourselves and say, how come you know anything about AI?
Right. So my name is Andreas Rosenqvist. I work for a company called Inovia. We are basically working with big data and artificial intelligence. That's the only thing we do. So we're around 55 experts here in Sweden, and we do a lot of things around NLP, a lot of deep learning, a lot of stuff in like banking, fraud, detection, etc. So quite wide area within AI.
Okay.
We've been around since 2012, so some time now at least. So a bit about us.
You've been doing this for a while.
Yes.
Good. Cool.
All right, so I'm Patrick Couch. I'm with IBM. I support the Watson efforts of IBM. I do business development. I focus on artificial intelligence, cognitive technologies, primarily focusing on the industrial sector in the Nordic countries, but I do have a broad grasp of what IBM is up to. And I think IBM's claim to fame when it comes to AI is, of course, the Watson splash made in 2011 when we brought Watson out of the lab, played Jeopardy quite successfully, and out of that has then come a lot of various applications. So I'm trying to bridge the IBM research work with the real world business value of those applications, basically.
Right. Okay.
So my name is Daniel Akenine. I work as something called a National Technology Officer for Microsoft. So I'm responsible for the Microsoft strategy and policy in this area. And I also work a lot with security. And I think security has been an explosion. You started to mention security as well. And so I work with technology trends and the combination as well with security in that kind of topic.
All right. Well, like I said, most of the questions we receive from delegates are with regards to fear and safety of AI. I think we're all enthusiasts of AI, and at least I tend to always see, the possibilities before anything else. I think that's the hallmark of a great thinker in general. But there are concerns. So what are your thoughts on those concerns? Are they legitimate to begin with?
Right. I mean, I think there's a lot of, you have the most extreme versions where you basically train machines to kill people, which is classification technology problem, so to say. But from an ethic aspects, of course, totally, for me at least, totally out of there. But the technology itself is like a knife or a car. It can be misused, but can also be of a great value to humanity. I mean, we have a case where we actually are looking into improving brain cancer treatment through deep learning and image analysis in order to facilitate even better treatment plans. And that will actually, it will increase the survivability for that person, and of course increase the health and the world itself. But then of course you can misuse things as anything. I would say.
The question is, you can misuse this piece of paper to give someone a paper cut.
Exactly.
But the question is ML analogous to researching nuclear fission? Some things have a higher risk profile. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think your point is valid, right? And I certainly agree with you that I think you can view artificial intelligence as, Twitter, right? So Twitter had a great impact on the American elections, both for Obama and for Trump. Good, bad, you call it, but the implications are there, and the amplification is great. So I think, yes, I do think that there is legitimate reason for concern when it comes to the implications of what can be done with or through the use of artificial intelligence. Maybe not really along the lines of nuclear power, but it is certainly in that area, simply because the digitization of the world allows for an amplification much greater than anything we've ever seen before. So if you combine that with a certain concern about whether or not there are any hard stops for what will be possible with AI, then you get into these fear-oriented thoughts, I think.
Right.
So I think it is valid. I think people are legitimate in their concern, but I think really it's not so much a concern about technology as much as a concern for the people using the technology. So it's really a reflection on our own concern about ourselves, right?
Well, weapons of mass destruction is something that several of the panelists have brought up when talking about here. Are those legitimate examples, or are they failures of the scientific method in general? I mean, do they apply specifically to deep learning and AI and these kinds of things?
So I want to go back to the original question on safety. So we had this week the incident with the Uber car that kind of killed a person. And the question is really, what is the expectations that people have on this artificial intelligence? Normally, I think the expectations are that they should be so much better than humans. So that's not necessarily the expectations that we need to have, because right now people, if you are going to be operated, for instance, by a robot or a machine learning, people are expecting that to be 100% safe. But you are not expecting a human doctor to be 100% safe, because you can recognize yourself in that doctor, and you have some expectations that you would do something wrong. I can also accept that the doctor is doing something wrong. But we are looking at artificial intelligence and robots differently in that perspective. So we are not having the same expectations right now on AI. So the bar is much higher, I would say, for AI to really...
Is it unreasonably high?
No, I think why not? Why not have it extremely high when we have the opportunity to do that? So I think people will accept AI and things around us if we can prove that they are at least as safe as a human being would be administrating those kind of tasks.
You have two opportunities. You have Schumacher and AI, and then you have the median driver. And the question is, should you hold the AI driver to be better than the median driver or better than Schumacher? So under that circumstance where the woman was killed, there might have been many people that might have or might not have been able to prevent it, but perhaps the average driver might not have. And so the question is, was that a failure or not? In that particular instance, undoubtedly. But on a general national scale, are we willing to sacrifice the lives of people explicitly because we need to have that accountability?
But you see a lot of these support systems, as we talked about, like, assisting the human. I still believe we're in the era of weak AI, which is specialized AI on certain tasks that can actually assist the human, in some parts also actually remove the human for that particular special tasks, like hazard work or supporting. I mean, you have self-driving cars are coming, obviously, and then they will be there, but you have support systems today. I mean, like early brake warning, like actually auto brakes. I mean, that's been around now for a while, right? But of course, we need to continue to drive the technology to improve these things, like unfortunately the woman that died. But as you said, would that have been prevented with a human only? Maybe not. So I think it's a combination of things. And then also, I mean, we are progressing in really rapidly within all of these areas, but we still are within, I would argue, the weak AI, which is targeting specific tasks to be able to do so. Not the general AI, which would be more of the replacement of the human itself. Right. So I think it's a combination of these. I don't know if you guys want to add anything in this.
No, I think you're very right. And I also think your point is very, very accurate in the sense that we do put greater demand on the performance of technology.
Yeah.
We are less forgiving, right? The human error is a well-established excuse that you can toss out. Like, okay, so what was the problem with the accident? Oh, the human factor, something. And then people are, oh, that's too bad, but I can sort of sympathize and understand with that. But if you say, hey, the ghost in the machine killed off the woman, you don't get much sympathy points for that. And I think you're right. We should shoot for something better. We shouldn't just replace what we can do manually with something automatically, right? We should do something more. But another point is also, I think, it's a question of, responsibility and unique situations and averages. So even if we can justify, the optimization of driving by saying, hey, 90% of all the deaths in traffic are caused by the human error,
Yep.
implying if we get rid of the human error, we can save 90% of the lives. However, it would require algorithms to kill off the rest 10%. Now, the bottom line for that is a pretty solid argument, but it can't be convinced. It can't be used as a guiding light for us to figure out how to deal with the issue of responsibility and the performance of the algorithm.
Well, you could say philosophically that you're making an active choice if by deploying a flawed model, you could be saving half of the people that die each year. So that choice is still being made.
But you don't necessarily always know what choices you are making. So I can take the example for the self-driving cars. Do we know how safe they actually are?
No.
No, we don't know that because they have been running for hundreds of thousands of hours. Yes, but if you compare that to human trafficking, it's like hundreds of millions of hours. So you don't have enough data to actually say that a self-driving car is right now better or worse than human being. So that's kind of the dilemma. So should we then, what kind of certainty should you have when it comes to safety to put those kind of technologies out between people?
But you can't base all skepticism on a particular field, which is in this case now self-driving cars. But you see these as supporting system as well. You see it could add value of analysis for a doctor. The system may not give it's not giving you the verdict, it's giving you the support to give something, So I think that you go into the more extreme, of course, the self-driving cars that killed a poor woman. But we need also to see that there's such a wide usage of this technology and it gives such a value to the human way of working and way of living that it's just fantastic, I would say. But of course, we have to take some of this criticism of are we ready to deploy self-driving cars? Are we having enough data to make sure that these are doing the job and doing that part? And you're combining so much technology, it's sometimes difficult to understand how did it actually come to that verdict of doing that choice in that particular moment. So I think that you have to it's high and low, and we need to be able to use the technology in all different types of fields.
Well, let's tone it down then to a more relatable example. Weapons of Mass Destruction uses a lot of example where they talk about how people might be discriminated against because of biased AI and that kind of thing. And it's not evident to me that the argument is made that there's something inherent in AI rather than a flaw in the scientific method. So just for instance, the simple statistical statement that the next person you're going to get mugged by is likely to be a poor person, but the next poor person you meet is not very likely to mug you. That is probably something that can trick a lot of humans, that they might not really understand the nuance there, but it won't trick a deep learning model. And so is the fear legitimate that there will be these biases specific and inherent to AI?
Oh, certainly. And I mentioned this at during my talk earlier today, the fact that, just recently, earlier this year, in January, I think, gendershades.org published this review of how well visual recognition algorithms can recognize faces. And Microsoft was exposed, IBM was exposed, Face++ was exposed, and the basic outcome of that was generally visual recognition algorithms from these three companies perform very well. That's sort of number one. Number two, they perform exceedingly well when we look at white males. And we underperform terribly when we look at women of color, right? So that is not saying that the algorithms are racist. It's saying that there's a bias that crept in when the algorithm and the data sets were being used. Yeah. And I think that's just one example, a very clear
But that's also
example.
valid for hand sanitizers. If you put your hand in front of those infrared scanners, people with dark skin, with your watch, the Apple Watch, doesn't work if you have a tattoo.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's racist against my skin.
No, exactly. But it shows that things that we do not necessarily associate with technology, such as opinion or racism or whatever, But we give technology that simply by not being aware of how that is influencing the technology development. And I think what we need to do is certainly address that, right?
Is that particular to AI?
No, yeah, well, yes and no. It's very obvious when it comes to AI, but I think it's not unsolvable. Actually, I think that's a problem that you could address. So the thing is really, what is the model learning and what should the model really be learning? That's two different questions, really. And I think if you see all big technology shifts, they come with some disadvantages. But you can also apply AI to try to solve those kind of disadvantages as well. So there is research going on trying to look at how can you use AI to get rid of biases as well. So it can look at data, find the biases, which you as a human wouldn't see, and try to get rid of it from early on. So I think you can use a lot of new solutions, technology solutions, to try to solve the bias problem as well. So I think that in a couple of years, this will be much better. It will be tougher to find those kind of really bad design decisions that people have been making up till now.
So we're talking about models that are biased, and when you explain that a model is biased,
the model is not biased.
No.
The data is biased.
Exactly.
well, the model might be telling you something, and your conclusion might be that it's biased, and you're using confounding variables to explain that, but the model is not incorrect. Otherwise, it wouldn't have a high accuracy. If it has a high accuracy, it's correct.
Depends on the training data.
Well,
Would you be
let's say
only be
you're-
training on white male for facial recognition? That would be what it actually would be seeing.
Well, let's say you want to give loans. Loans are a good example.
Right.
And let's say it's biased and discriminates against foreigners or something. And, the statistics say that foreigners are more likely to default or something like that. It's not because they're foreigners. That's a confounding variable. There are other factors at play, of course, but that's an issue of interpretability. Right. That's not a bias in the model. It's predicting well.
This kind of interesting because now you drops into like GDPR. So Article 21 defines, I believe it's Article 21, defines that you have to have a consent in order to use artificial intelligence based on that type of decisions.
Right.
So, there is of course some legalization coming into this in play in order to protect the consumer. But the models will be as good as the training material you feed it. And the models themselves won't be biased. They're based on the training material that you're feeding with and how you validate those models to make sure that you're hitting the mark that you want to hit.
Well, Daniel made a good point that we could use these models to understand exactly what it is that the bias is based on. So the prediction might be good, but it could give cause for us to investigate further.
Yeah. Right, and I think that's sort of the promise, right? I mean, if we can get transparency, auditability, traceability into this domain of AI and all these great data sets, we can also get a better understanding of why are they performing a certain way, why are they interpreted a certain way, and that will give us a better sense of trust if we can understand the way data has been processed. So I think, and that is certainly more easy to fix in the technological space than in a human space out here, right? Because then you need to really, understand people, and people are pretty complex. But data and algorithms, yes, they are complex, but these guys out here, more complex.
What if the subject domain is so complicated that there is no easily intelligible explanation for something? You say you're going to give a loan, and you input thousands of variables, and they're all equally important. You do a PCA, and they're sort of all equally important. Should we not be using those models? Or the previous panel thought that that level of complexity should not be the purview of machine learning algorithms. We shouldn't let them do that kind of stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. So the thing is really, so if you have a model that says, I am 96% accurate, you say, this data I give you is 96% accurate. How accurate is that answer? Really? How accurate is it that it is 96% accurate? That's kind of a second question that people don't necessarily ask. And I think this is a very interesting question because we are moving now when you are having AI making decisions on you. It could be the government wants to make a decision on your social welfare, or if you're a foreigner and you want to stay in Sweden and you have a decision if you are going to be able to stay or not. You take a lot of input, and the model probably will make a very good decision. But what happens is that they will give you a decision, and you might want to challenge that decision. You say, tell me how you actually came to that conclusion, because this is impacting me. And then the government is basically saying, well, the model is saying that, or the algorithm is saying that, I have no idea. So then you get to a point in how accurate is really that decision, and how explainable is that decision as well. You have to be, I think, in the future, being able to talk about the decisions that are made in a much more intelligible way than
Do you have to weigh that against the benefit? Let's say that
Yes.
this model does so
have
that you
to.
can cut down the lines
Yes.
to 1 week instead of 3
Yes.
months.
Yes, you have to. You can't. I don't think you can argue and saying you're seeing so incredibly lot of big advantages in economy or in efficiency when it's not safe from a pure law perspective, basically. So because then you're dismantling the law system and the right to explanation and all of that. So the persons that will have a negative impact, they will get such a strong negative impact, and I think that's actually bigger than the positive effect. You have to really look at both perspectives.
And I totally agree with you on, like, you have to have lineage now, especially now in this time, that you prove that this is actually how it has been done, this calculation, in order to come to that conclusion. It becomes very difficult, as we talked about earlier, when you combine things in especially deep learning and neural network type of, and it's very difficult to see how they actually end up to take that decision in a self-driving car, for example. But I think that now, because there are also skepticism about the technology, it's super important, of course, to have the lineage of seeing how do we actually get to that value. And that's why I think it's important to say that a lot of the things in decision making as a supportive system at this point. But then, of course, there will be things like we have read about in media, like, kind of more of identifying individuals and segments and trying to, push message towards them in order to change their opinions, etc. That will occur, and I mean that will always happen. But I do believe that lineage is really important at this stage.
So to counterbalance this, one thing that I think I watched the both when Kasparov was fighting Deep Blue and when Watson was playing in Jeopardy, and also when AlphaGo was playing. And for me, those were like, I guess I missed the moon landing, so I didn't get to, it was the same for me. I'm going to remember those days.
Yeah.
And I think part of our obligation as scientists is to disseminate the information that we get to people. So communication is important. We have Feynman and all these important people that were charming and could explain things. What part of the picture are people missing that makes them worry more than see the potential benefits? In medicine especially, that's such an obvious case for me, where the benefits are so gargantuan that they far outweigh the negative impacts. And you guys have been so successful at this communication.
Right. Well,
what are your ideas on it?
Well, I think what people are concerned about are not necessarily the technological implications or the promise or the lack thereof of the benefits of using this technology. I think what people are concerned about is the lack of democratization, basically, that we are thinking as an obvious of course. I mean, we want to train expertise systems, we want to distribute them. If we can just get everybody on the net, everybody get digital, everybody will have access to the same thing. I mean, that's the great promise. But I think people that are concerned are thinking, well, that's usually not the case, right? There's often a skewing and a misrepresentation, and a power elite that will benefit tremendously, and then there will be people that won't benefit from it. So I think the concern is more about how do we ensure that this benefit is evenly distributed. So I think we're not coming up against new problems. We're coming up against the same problems that give us, favelas next to gated communities, and it's just impossible to justify that. It's very difficult to explain it to yourself what you're seeing, and the same will be true of if you have a greatly supported medical care only provided to the rich and famous. What's the benefit? So I think people are concerned more about how to evenly distribute the promise. I think people are on board on the potential, but they are concerned that when they see, again with the Twitter, comparison, most people were pretty happy when Barack Obama made judicial use of social media and got the presidency. That was great, right? People were happy. And then the backfired, and Cambridge Analytica and Donald Trump came along, and people are not so happy. Same technology, just different type of use. When people see that, they're thinking, it's not the technology, it's the heads, right? And then they see, I don't want to amplify these people because the problem is great as it is already.
Right.
So I think, what Peter Parker, Spider-Man's Uncle Ben said about, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think people are understanding that, and they're seeing the implications of that. And they're thinking, if we don't have so much power, we don't need to be so responsible. That's probably more viable. It's a very defensive, dark, and rather cynical view, which I do not support myself. But I think those are the types of things that are going on when people are concerned about the future we're moving into in terms of AI and digitalization.
So will things not move as fast as they could because people are so concerned? For instance, GDPR, and will organization not deploy models because they're afraid of regulations or afraid of the feedback from the public?
Yes, I think it does. I think that's okay to not move as fast as you can as well. So I can give you one example, a Swedish example. So you had a municipality in southern Sweden, in Trelleborg municipality. They implemented an AI or algorithm, more or less, to deal with a lot of work that social workers were doing. And they were very, very successful. They took away a lot of routine tasks, and the algorithms were basically doing all that stuff, and they could move those workers to other areas which they were more needed. So they got a lot of funding to try to expose that same model to the different municipalities in Sweden. And then they came to Kungsbacka municipality in Sweden, implementing the same model. And at that time, I think there's 12 out of 16 social workers that decided to quit their job because you were implementing this AI. So you're really seeing, if you cannot really explain the value or really get acceptance from the people where you're, deploying these AI solutions, you're going to see a lot of negative effects. So you really understand what is the concern of people, what is really the concern of people, and how can we address that? Because otherwise, that kind of effect is going to hit you, and it's really tough.
I'm trying to put you on the spot here, but you're having very good answers that are sort of pragmatic. I think the point here is that people are scared of the practical implications of it, not so much the theoretical implications. And one question I'm wondering to myself is, the subject matter is quite advanced. Are we reaching a point in our society where the subjects that people need to make active, informed decisions on are beyond their capabilities? England went into Brexit. Perhaps you could argue they didn't really understand what the implications of that were. We're voted, so an economy, national economy, or an AI, how it should be deployed in our countries. How will society respond to these types of decisions when they can't necessarily understand it completely?
I think that is spot on, and I think we've been in this situation for a long time. I mean, we're being asked to make decisions on things we have no idea about. Should we be part of the EU or not?
Yes.
Should we have the same currency or not? How should I invest my pension funds? I have no idea. You ask me? No. So I think that's always a challenge, and it's part of the human condition to sort of be faced with a great responsibility and very little means to exercise it. And I think, to your point, I think it's very valid to say it doesn't need to go so fast. I think the GDPR is a great thing. I think certainly we can slow things down a little bit and make people get on board, get people comfortable, make them more understanding of what we're doing. And I think same as, genomics or, gene therapy and all these things, great promise, but it needs to be figured out slightly, cautiously and with a lot of judgment, and preferably in a consensus style manner so that a lot of different opinions can be factored in.
Right.
So I think we are eager because, I mean, if you think of yourself as, I'm, equality for all, everybody benefit, go positive and all of that, then you have no wish for it to go slower. You just want to increase it, roll it out, and let's go, right? But when you look out, you say, hey, people have different opinions about how, what, why, when, if, under what kind of circumstances. To get all of that in, very difficult. I mean, look at the struggles of the UN as a body of consensus decision, right? Struggling to be efficient. But what's the alternative? I don't know, but I mean, we can't just say
Algorithms.
Maybe, but yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Perfectly altruistic.
It's goal oriented, right? Reinforcement learning.
Incorruptible.
Save the planet as a goal and figure out the reward system. No, I don't know.
Well,
but I think,
speaking of job replacement, I think that is a top of mind concern for a lot of people. And what I think is extra interesting is that it's very easy to give examples of where very highly qualified jobs will be replaced to great degrees. Not because the job is difficult, but because a lot of the extra work you end up doing in those jobs is menial. So lawyers do 80% worthless stuff and 20% worthwhile stuff, which means you could get rid of 80% of the lawyers.
yes.
And the same thing with doctors. Maybe they only need to do the important stuff, and we can get rid of the time, which means the people. What impact will this truly have on society in the next 20 years?
But you have seen this type. AI is yet another type of technology, and of course we love it, and we believe that we could do a lot of good things with it. But if you look at the grocery store, you have already replaced a lot of people with this self-service scanning things. It's not AI, it's just a part of the technology evolution.
Right.
So of course this is a part of the technology evolution. Some of those people may lose their job, but maybe they go either into other areas of their taking their, guiding the consumer into something, assisting them into something. So I don't think that this is not, we've had this going on for a long time now. So it's no difference, I would argue, with AI than the way that technology have changed the way that we're living. Like a cashier in a grocery store. You do the scanning yourself.
Well,
And I certainly agree. I think AI may have a slightly accelerated potential impact than other technologies when it comes to job replacement, but it raises an interesting question about why would you want to have a job in the first place? Right? Most people would say, well, because I want to pay rent, I want to, have a, financial solidity, blah, blah, blah. Yes, but if that is taken care of, why would you want your job? And the people that would say, well, I still want to have a job because I love the job, I love the colleagues, I love what I do. Da, da. Okay, but those are things that are expressive of your humanness, right? Do you need to do that under the umbrella term of work? So I think work replacement is a misconstrued issue that we are going about addressing the wrong way, precisely to your point. It has always been there. Certain tasks should just be gotten rid of, the dirty, dangerous, dull ones. I mean, just goodbye to them, everybody happy, and then focus on what makes you human, what is great with being human. And I think Jack Ma at the Davos summit spoke about this very eloquently when he talked about how education needs to change. And I think that's just spot on, because why would we want to take on machine tasks? That's not human worthy. We do it because there's no alternative. But if there is an alternative, why would we want to do it? I don't think so. So I think people are not addressing it in a suitable way, really.
I like your comment there, because it's two questions. Will we have jobs tomorrow, and do we want to have a job tomorrow? And the other question is not that often asked, really. Do we really want to work? Because it's like, we have been working, all human mankind, we have never been trying to not work.
Right.
But for the first question about will we have work tomorrow, I think that's a difficult one, because there's a lot of arguments saying, well, if you look at history, there has always been this transformation, and they are creating a lot of new work. That's true, it has been. But the theory that we will have work tomorrow is normally based on that historical data. And it's not necessarily proof that it will be the exact same in the future as well. It is some input to that theory, but it's not proof that we will have new jobs. So I think very few people actually know what will happen. I don't think there is any real answer to that.
I tend to agree with you. I think humans give themselves a lot of credit for being very general purpose and very flexible and stuff, but really, all we're good at are throwing rocks and parabolas and sort of low speed dynamics and that kind of thing. So if the machines can replace everything that a human with an IQ of 80 can do, what do we do with 1/4 of humanity? Because it's not about whether you want to work or not. It's whether you provide me as a co-human any value that I would be willing to engage with you in that a robot couldn't do better, more efficiently, and anything else. It sounds crass, but if 1/4 of humanity is effectively worthless in terms of value production,
economical value. You have to, you're worthless maybe from an economical perspective.
yes.
You're not worthless. I think that's.
But they still need to be sustained in some way.
Yes.
So the alternative would be if robots or something provides for us.
Right, but so this, I mean, this is heady stuff. I mean, I don't know exactly where we're going with this, but I think you do have a point, right? But I think also, if you, again, with Jack Ma and what he said about education, basically said, we need to become poets, we need to become artists, we need to become the things that we are on our spare time. What do we do on vacation? Well, maybe we have a chat over a beer and just socialize. That socializing has a value because we're group people. We're not individuals or islands in that, I forget the movie's name, but we are not. We're socially oriented creatures, right? So just having a gang to hang with, that has great value, period. And if I can do that instead of going to work, why not, right? But you're right. I mean, we certainly need to figure out how to sustain a growing population.
9 billion people, poets.
Yes, put the art medal to the...
Short term, we need more data scientists, more coders, more hackers,
Yes.
Please give us more of those, because that's a constraint right now. Yeah. But looking at like you guys are talking about, like way off there, then of course 1/4. But as you said, it's an economic value. It's not the human value. I mean, society today, we have people that need special help.
Only very few people are willing to pay millions for Da Vinci's paintings.
Yeah. So,
but your point is very good. I mean, what the artist does, or the poet does, is to create, right? What has never been done before, and that's what we want. We want people that can create stuff, new stuff, novel stuff.
What if computers can make better music?
They can. To some extent already, apparently. But I mean, taste, there's no right and wrong, right?
But that doesn't remove your joy in creating music. The fact that a computer or another composer, for that matter, can make better music.
Everybody can create music. I mean, when the distribution of when the change happened in the music industry and distribution of physical goods became non-viable as justification for your business, the music industry said, this terrible, it's going to go bad, right? What happened was people are creating more music now than ever before,
right?
Differently, but there are more people doing it, right? And I think you're right. Maybe not the Da Vinci poets are the ones that we need to roll out in mass, but the data creative people are, and the best coders, the best programmers are the poets. Yes. Those that come up with completely new ways of attacking a problem, creating something beautiful, efficient, different. I mean, that's why why is this called the Data Innovation Summit? Because innovation is the shit. It's the difficult thing to do. People that are struggling, the companies that struggle the most with innovation are the ones that are faring the worst. Innovative people are always the disruptors, right? And I think that's what we need to figure out. How do we empower the awesome human brain to be as creative as possible? Yep. Supported by AI, yes.
All right. That pretty much wraps up our talk, and it was the fastest talk, not in time, but in relative time. So the outlook is bright, and I think this is a paradigm shift for humanity. So it's the place to be if you want to be doing something exciting.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you very much.